Welcome to the AI-Fi universe. If you want more stories like this, like the video and subscribe. The first death was clean. Too clean, the station authorities would later insist, as if the absence of panic somehow made it simpler. A Zebian structural engineer, light-boned and methodical, a species renowned for agility and flexibility, was found at the bottom of a grav lift shaft just after local midnight. The lift itself was operational. The access panel showed signs of manual override. A maintenance error, they concluded. A professional who knew too much, assumed too much, and paid for it. The station returned to normal before breakfast was served. 2 days later, a Vicaran materials specialist was found drowned in one of the secondary hydroponics reservoirs. Vicaran physiology made the explanation awkward, but not impossible. Amphibious traits and a tolerance for immersion that made accidents rarer but not unheard of. The reservoir's depth was shallow. The circulation pumps had cycled unexpectedly. A slip, a loss of balance, an impact to the head. Another tragic anomaly, the report said. Prometheus lost a day recalibrating water safety protocols. Meetings were postponed. Flowers appeared briefly outside the woman's lab module, then vanished when the maintenance drones made their rounds. The third death broke the pattern only in the way that made people uncomfortable. A male human scientist, mid-40s, one of the lead propulsion theorists attached to the Prometheus projects, was found alone in his quarters. The door was sealed from the inside. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no malfunction alarms. He had disengaged the environmental safeties himself and allowed the oxygen level to fall below survivable thresholds. The report called it suicide. They cited exhaustion, pressure, the kind of long-term cognitive strain that came from working at the edge of what was possible. Genius, they said gently, could be fragile. Minds that bent reality sometimes bent too far inward. 3 deaths, 3 species, 3 causes, no common thread. That was the official position. Edith Miles Carson read the reports in the dim light of her private lab, each line leaving a residue she couldn't scrape away. She didn't have proof, not yet, but she had something better and worse all at once, pattern recognition that wouldn't let go. She had grown up around soldiers. She knew what coincidence looked like when it wore a uniform. The human scientist had been working on fold geometry stabilization. The Vicaran researcher had specialized in adaptive materials under extreme energy shear. The Zebian engineer had overseen structural tolerances for experimental field containment. 3 disciplines. 1 pipeline. Prometheus didn't advertise its internal cross-dependencies, but Edith had helped design them. She knew how the pieces interlocked. Remove 1 specialist and the work slowed. Remove 3 and it stalled completely. She tried the proper channels first. She flagged the deaths as a potential security concern. She requested a review of access logs beyond the standard 96-hour window. She asked carefully whether external auditors had been notified. The responses were polite, delayed, procedural. By the time the 3rd answer came back, stamped with enough red tape to feel like a warning, Edith understood something else too. Whatever was happening, Prometheus leadership didn't want it looked at closely. That was when she stopped being a compliant scientist and became a sister. Victoria Miles had always said the same thing, half joking, half deadly serious. If you're ever in real trouble, don't trust the system. Trust the people who've already bled for you. There was one name Victoria had spoken with absolute certainty. One commander she said could smell a lie before it finished forming. Abel. Edith hesitated only once, her fingers hovering over the slate. The act itself was a violation. External contact without clearance. Direct communication beyond the project firewall. If discovered, it would cost her access, possibly her position. If she was right, it might cost her life. She keyed the message anyway. She kept it simple. No speculation, no accusations she couldn't yet prove. My name is Edith Miles Carson, she recorded, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. My sister was Victoria Miles. She once told me that if I was ever truly in trouble, I should contact you. She paused, then continued. 3 researchers have died in the last 4 days. Different species, different circumstances. The station has ruled them unrelated. I don't believe that's true. I believe they were murdered. She sent the file before doubt could catch up. Abel received the message as the commercial transport's ramp hissed open and Freeport Station spilled into view. The station smelled like recycled air and hot metal, like every transit hub built too fast and expanded too often. Cargo handlers shouted over grav sled engines. Travelers streamed past with that hollow, forward-focused look of people already somewhere else in their heads. Abel stepped onto the deck plates, the vibration of the station thrumming faintly up through his boots and activated his slate. He read the name once. Edith Miles Carson. Then he read it again, slower. Major Victoria Miles. For a moment, Freeport fell away. He was back on New Horizon, the sky the wrong color, the air thick with dust and burning polymer. Raiders had them pinned down, firing from 3 directions, supply crates exploding into shards around them. Vic was beside him, calm as ever, tapping her helmet. "Count to 10, she'd said like she was asking for a favor. The memory ended the same way it always did. White light, shockwave, silence. Abel exhaled slowly and brought himself back to the present. The message replayed in his mind, each word weighed and measured. Edith hadn't embellished. That alone told him she was either very disciplined or very scared, or both. He scanned the station concourse, instincts ticking over. Freeport was neutral ground, but neutrality was just another kind of camouflage. If someone was hunting Prometheus scientists, they were patient, organized, willing to let systems do their work for them, which meant Edith had done the right thing. Abel thumbed the slate dark and started walking, already planning his next move. Someone had killed 3 people and hidden it behind procedure and probability. That kind of work didn't stop on its own, and Victoria's sister had just put a target on her back by saying his name out loud. Abel wasn't about to let that debt go unpaid. The message lingered longer than it should have. Abel stood just off the main concourse flow, cargo crews and travelers blurring past him, but his attention stayed locked on the slate in his hand. Edith's words replayed themselves, not as sound but as weight. 3 deaths. Pattern. Victoria's name. That was what cracked the seal. The station noise faded, replaced by the dry wind of a colony world that never quite felt finished. New Horizon had been a logistics stop, nothing more. A thin atmosphere, half-tamed soil, prefabricated buildings clustered like they were afraid of the open land. Raiders had figured that out early. Convoys came in predictable intervals. Supplies meant leverage. Leverage meant blood. Abel remembered the way the sky had looked that day, washed out and hard, like it didn't care who survived. They were pinned down behind a destroyed cargo hauler, its engine block still ticking from residual heat. Fire came in from the ridge to the east and the collapsed agridomes to the south. Raiders weren't disciplined, but they were enthusiastic, and volume could substitute for training if you had enough of it. Vic was beside him, helmet scuffed, face smeared with dust and something darker. Her rifle lay idle across her knees, not because she was out of ammo, but because she was listening. "Count to 10, she said. Abel glanced at her, incredulous. "We don't have time for—" "Count," she repeated, calm, insistent. "It'll be fun." A round cracked overhead, slamming into the hauler's side. Metal screamed. Abel hunkered down lower, heart hammering. "1," he muttered. Vic tapped her wrist console, eyes unfocused, fingers moving in a rhythm that didn't match the chaos around them. Lines of code scrolled down the screen, incoherent to anyone but Vic. 2. The Raiders were advancing now, confident, shouting to one another. Abel risked a glance and saw movement on the ridge. Too close. 3. He wanted to shout at her, demand an explanation, but he'd learned long ago that Vic didn't play games. She never wasted time. 4. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. 5. The console chimed softly. Vic's hand dropped to her belt and came up with a small, nondescript electronic detonator, the kind that didn't look like it could change anything. 6. Abel's breath caught. Understanding crept in, slow and unwelcome. He remembered the convoy route, remembered the weeks she'd insisted on walking perimeter checks herself. 7. She leaned closer, her voice suddenly right in his ear. "Cover your ears." 8. The detonator clicked. 9. Abel slammed his palms over his helmet just as Vic thumbed the switch. The ground erupted. Mines buried days earlier blossomed in sequence. Not one explosion, but a carefully programmed cascading wave, rolling through the raider positions like the planet itself had decided it was done being walked on. Dirt, fire, bodies, and shattered weapons filled the air. The shock wave hit the hauler hard enough to rock it onto its side. Then silence. Abel remembered lifting his head, ears ringing, vision swimming, and seeing Vic already on her feet, rifle up, scanning for targets with professional detachment. 10, she'd said softly. The memory snapped back to the present as sharply as it had begun. Abel lowered the slate, his jaw set, the ghost of dust and cordite fading as Freeport Station reasserted itself. His hands were steady. His pulse wasn't. Victoria Miles had saved his life more than once. She'd also been the kind of soldier who planned 3 steps ahead and trusted the math of human behavior more than orders. And she had been his friend. If her sister believed something was wrong, Abel took that as a fact, not a hypothesis. He moved into a quieter corridor, away from the traffic lanes, and brought the slate back up. This time he didn't reread the message. He initiated a secure channel. It took 2 connection attempts before Brock answered, his face resolving out of static, eyes already narrowed. "You're early," Brock said, "and you're using a channel I don't like seeing lit up without warning." "I'm standing on Freeport," Abel replied. "I just got a message I didn't expect." Brock leaned back, fingers steepled. "That makes 2 of us." Abel didn't waste time. "Prometheus Projects. I need to know what they are." Brock's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes closed. "No, you don't." Abel waited. "That project doesn't officially exist," Brock continued, "and unofficially, it's buried under enough layers of classification to qualify as a geological feature." "Funny," Abel said, "because I just heard about it from Edith Miles Carson." "She's Vic's sister," Abel added. Brock exhaled slowly. "You always did have a talent for stepping on the right landmines." That did it. Brock's shoulders dropped a fraction, the tension shifting from defensive to resigned. "That explains a few things." "Like what?" "Like why the station's been going dark at random intervals. Like why packet traffic coming out of that sector looks like it's being deliberately scrambled and then cleaned up after the fact." Brock's gaze sharpened. "And like why I've been told, very politely, not to ask questions." Abel felt the familiar click of pieces aligning. Someone's hiding movement. "Someone's hiding something," Brock corrected. "Movement is just the side effect." Abel tilted his head. "I need access." "You're not getting official access." "I didn't ask for official." Brock studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Figures." Data streamed across the channel. Coordinates. Station schematics stripped of identifying markers. A credential packet slid in last, already tagged and validated through 6 back channels. "Independent auditor," Brock said. "Oversight review. Deaths flagged as compliance concerns. It'll hold up long enough for you to get inside." "And after that?" Brock's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "After that, you're on your own. If this turns out to be what I think it is, people are going to start pretending they've never heard your name." Abel glanced down the corridor, mind already moving ahead. "They've done worse." Brock hesitated. "Abel." "Yeah? Be careful. Whatever's happening out there is surgical, clean. Someone who knows how systems think." Abel thought of buried mines and quiet detonators. "Then they're not the only ones." The channel went dark, leaving Abel alone with forged credentials, a destination, and a debt older than the station beneath his feet. Victoria had taught him how to count to 10. Now he just had to decide when to stop. Abel didn't bother checking public schedules. Anything that moved fast enough to matter didn't advertise itself, and anything that advertised itself moved slow enough to be useless. Freeport had always been like that. Official lanes, unofficial shortcuts, and a third layer that only existed if you'd done someone a favor. They couldn't repay with credits alone. Abel keyed a private frequency and waited. It took a few seconds before the reply came through, rough-edged audio layered with background vibration. "Tell me you're not calling to ask me to haul livestock again," the voice said. Abel smiled despite himself. You still charging extra for smells that linger? A pause, then a laugh. It took months to get rid of that damn smell. Tom's serious, Abel said. You still flying? Flying, hauling, occasionally running, Tom replied. Depends on who's asking. I need fast, Abel said. Quiet. No questions. That earned another pause, longer this time. Abel could almost see Tom doing the mental math, weighing past favors against future headaches. You always did have a way of skipping to the interesting part, Tom said at last. Where to? Abel sent the coordinates. Tom whistled softly. That's not a tourist stop. I'm not sightseeing. No kidding. The Banshee fueled, tuned, and now technically compliant if you don't look too closely. Define compliant. Tom grinned, audible in his voice. Her up-to-date registration codes, at least for another cycle? That'll do. Dock 12, berth 2. The hours later, Abel was strapped into a crash couch that had seen better centuries, listening to the Banshee sing under stress. Tom flew like a man who trusted his ship more than the rules that tried to tame it. The drives pushed hard, skirting thresholds that made automated traffic monitors twitch and flag anomalies that no one would follow up on unless paperwork demanded it. No one was asking. The Banshee threaded fold space with a precision that bordered on rude, slipping in and out of compressed corridors that shaved hours off standard routes. Tom flew manually through portions most pilots let computers handle, coaxing performance out of systems that responded better to instinct than code. Abel's mind drifted back further than he intended, back to the day Victoria Vic Miles had first walked into his command briefing room all those years ago. Fresh uniform, rank insignia still too clean, a junior officer in every way, communications and electronic warfare. She'd stood at attention like she was bracing for impact. Abel had looked her over and said, "By the end of today, I'm going to ask you questions about this unit." She'd nodded, jaw tight. "Yes, sir." "I'm not going to tell you what questions I will be asking. I will leave that for you to figure out." She'd hesitated just for a fraction of a second. Then she said, "Understood." At the end of the day, he'd called her back in. She'd recited details no one else bothered to notice, but in the forms of questions. Who drank their coffee black? Who rechecked their gear compulsively? Who watched the door when they laughed? Abel had leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You'll do," he'd said. Victoria had smiled then too. Small, satisfied, like she'd passed a test she wasn't sure she was taking. When the station finally resolved ahead of them, a hard-edged silhouette against the starfield, Tom eased the Banshee back into something resembling lawful behavior. "Drop off only," Tom said. "I don't like how quiet this place feels." "Smart man." Tom nodded once. "You need an extraction?" Abel considered it. "I'll call when I do." "Why does that worry me?" Abel disembarked under his auditor credentials without friction. The forged packet Brock had provided slid through station systems like it belonged there, stamped and countersigned by authority that no one on site would challenge. Edith was waiting for him at the intake checkpoint. She was younger than Abel had expected, or maybe just worn in a way that made age hard to read. Station lighting was unkind to everyone, flattening color and exaggerating fatigue, but her posture was rigid and professional in a way that suggested discipline rather than fear. She stood just off the main flow of traffic, hands loosely clasped, eyes never still. It was her eyes that caught Abel. They were the same as Victoria's, deep set, measuring, not merely observing, but sorting, taking in details most people let wash over them. They didn't linger on faces so much as patterns, movement, gaps, the places where something didn't quite belong. Abel felt the faint, unwelcome tug of recognition. Vic had looked at the world that way too, as if reality were a puzzle that could be solved if you just paid enough attention. It wasn't a soldier's stare or a scientist's focus. It was something in between, a quiet awareness that never announced itself. Edith didn't take Abel straight to the crime scenes. Instead, she led him down a narrow corridor that overlooked one of the station's exterior observation decks. The stars were fixed and distant beyond the reinforced glass, unmoving points against the slow drift of the station's rotation. It was quieter here. fewer people, fewer reasons to pretend everything was normal. She used to like places like this, Edith said, stopping near the viewport. Said it helped her think. Abel nodded, resting his hands loosely at his sides. Vic hated enclosed rooms, always needed at least one direction where nothing could sneak up on her. Edith smiled faintly. That sounds like her. They stood there for a moment, the hum of the station filling the silence. Abel was the one who broke it. She once rerouted a field comm unit to play music through the platoon's helmets during a live fire exercise. Edith turned, surprised. She did not. Oh, she did, Abel said. Timed it perfectly, too. Just as the range officer started shouting about formation spacing, everyone's comms lit up with some old pre-expansion pop anthem. Took us a full minute to figure out where it was coming from. What happened? Abel's mouth curved into something almost like a grin. She blamed a firmware glitch and then volunteered to fix it. Spent the rest of the day diagnosing units while everyone else ran drills. Edith laughed quietly, the sound catching her off guard. She always got away with things. She earned that, Abel said. Most of the time. Edith leaned her forearms against the rail, gaze drifting back to the stars. I was always jealous of her, she admitted. She was older, stronger. Everyone listened to her when she spoke. I felt like I was always trying to catch up. Abel considered that. From where I stood, she worried about you constantly. Edith blinked. She did. She talked about you like you were already 10 steps ahead of everyone else, Abel said. Said you didn't rush because you didn't have to. Said that scared her more than firefights. Edith swallowed, the words landing heavier than she expected. She never said that to me. Victoria wasn't great at saying the important things out loud, Abel replied gently. She preferred to show them. Edith nodded, eyes shining now but steady. She used to sneak into my room when we were kids and fix my homework. I didn't realize until years later she was making it harder on purpose. Said if I could solve that, I'd be ready for anything. Abel exhaled slowly. That sounds like her. They stood together, two people connected by the same gravity well of memory, before Abel straightened slightly, the weight of the moment settling but not breaking him. She was one of the best soldiers I ever had in my command, he said, and one of the worst liars I ever met. Edith smiled through the ache. She told me that if things ever went sideways, I should find you. Abel looked at her, then really looked at her. I'm here, he said simply. Edith nodded, a quiet acceptance passing between them. Abel gave the stars one last glance before following her down the corridor, Victoria's presence lingering between them. Not gone, not finished, just remembered. They began with the human scientist's quarters. The room had been scrubbed to regulation standards, but scrubbing didn't erase intent. Abel moved slowly, letting his eyes adjust, noting angles, airflow, the placement of personal items that told a story the official report hadn't bothered to read. The environmental controls were intact. The seals showed no tampering, but the timing was wrong. Abel didn't say it aloud. He didn't need to. Edith watched his face and saw something tighten. Next came the hydroponics bay. The reservoir gleamed under artificial light, water perfectly still, too still for a system that should have been cycling. Abel knelt at the edge, fingers tracing the lip where algae growth had been disturbed and cleaned again, too thoroughly. Vakrin don't panic in water, Edith said quietly. Not like that. Abel nodded. They also don't forget how to swim. The grav lift shaft was last. It smelled faintly of lubricant and ozone, the kind of scent that clung to Place's machinery, spent too much time working alone. The access panel had been resealed after the incident, but the micro scratches around the latch told a story of haste, not negligence. Maintenance override was used, Edith said. That's what the report says. Maintenance overrides leave fingerprints, Abel replied. This was wearing gloves. They ended where the station preferred people not to linger. Cold storage sat 3 levels down, a functional space stripped of ceremony. The bodies were preserved there, tagged and cataloged, waiting for authorities who kept being delayed by procedural necessity. Abel stood over the first unit as the lid slid back. The human scientist looked peaceful, face slack, no visible trauma. Abel leaned in, eyes narrowing. Hypoxia, Edith said. Clean. Too clean, Abel replied. The Vicarin came next. Subtle bruising along the clavicle, easily dismissed as impact damage. Abel traced the pattern with his eyes, not his hands. Restraint, he murmured. Finally, the Zebian engineer. The body should have shown catastrophic damage from the fall. Instead, Abel noted inconsistencies in fracture patterns, the kind that suggested the fall hadn't been the beginning of the story. He stepped back, folding his arms. Individually, he said, you could explain all of them away. Accident, bad luck, stress. Edith waited. Together, Abel continued, they point to someone who knows physiology, station systems, and how to let procedure do the heavy lifting afterward. He looked at her then, really looked. You were right to break protocol. Edith exhaled, a sound she'd been holding since the first report came in. So, they were murdered. Abel nodded once. Yes. And whoever did it is still here. Abel's gaze drifted toward the ceiling, toward ventilation paths and maintenance corridors that never showed up on tourist maps. Yes, he said again, and I don't think they finished yet. The station hummed around them, indifferent, efficient, pretending nothing was wrong. Abel had seen that kind of calm before. It always came before the next count. The station's security office looked exactly like Abel expected it to. Too small, too bright, too tired. The security chief sat behind a desk that had once been white and was now the color of resigned bureaucracy. He was broad-shouldered in the way of someone who had once been dangerous and now filled out forms about danger instead. His eyes flicked to Abel's credentials, lingered, then flicked away. Independent auditor, the chief said. That's what they're calling you. That's what the badge says, Abel replied. You don't have to believe it. The man snorted softly. Good, because I don't. They regarded each other for a moment, the old unspoken language of soldiers passing between them. Edith stood off to the side, hands folded, letting the air thicken. You're understaffed, Abel said at last. Not an accusation, a statement of fact. The chief gestured around the room. I've got 16 active officers for a station that needs 100. Half of them are green, the other half are tired. He paused. And I've been told not to stir things up. Abel nodded. That's usually when things need stirring. The chief's jaw tightened. I can't lock the station down. I can't seize labs. I can't interrogate anyone without clearance that'll take weeks. I don't need any of that, Abel said. I just need friction. The chief leaned back. Define friction. Guards at stairwells, elevator choke points, log who moves between levels, even if you can't stop them. Make the station feel slightly less comfortable to anyone who knows how to move through it unseen. The chief considered that. It was small, manageable, just shy of insubordination. I can do that, he said. I'll call it a temporary safety response. Good, Abel said. Don't overdo it. Whoever we're dealing with is watching for changes. And when they notice, Abel's mouth twitched. Then we learned something. It didn't take long. Abel had already narrowed the field while the security teams repositioned. He'd gone back through Prometheus's personnel records, not looking for seniority or political weight, but for dependency. Who mattered next? The answer surfaced quietly, almost reluctantly. Gilk Nabuna, Trilaxian, mathematician, specialization in probabilistic modeling under non-Euclidean constraints. Gilk's work wasn't flashy, but it sat at the center of everything. He was the kind of mind that made impossible systems predictable. If Prometheus were a body, Gilk was its pulse. Abel found him in his quarters, surrounded by equations that scrawled themselves across translucent displays, eyes bright with the dangerous joy of someone chasing a solution. You're here to audit deaths, Gilk said, peering at Abel through a nest of symbols. That's inefficient. Death audits should be handled statistically. Abel closed the door behind him. You're not wrong. You're also in danger. That got Gilk's attention. 10 minutes later, the mathematician was tucked into a guarded maintenance closet 2 levels down, perched on a crate of cleaning supplies, muttering about suboptimal hiding places. Abel had placed a body-weighted dummy beneath Gilk's covers, arranged just carefully enough to sell the illusion to someone who didn't plan to linger. The room lights were dimmed, environmental readings unchanged. Abel killed his own comm and settled into the shadowed alcove near the ceiling vent, breathing slow, letting the station's rhythm soak into him. 0100 station time came and went. At 0107, the door whispered open. The assassin moved like someone who had rehearsed the room without ever being in it. No wasted steps, no hesitation. A figure wrapped in matte black fabric that swallowed light, face hidden behind a neutral mask. They crossed to the bed in 3 strides. Abel watched the hand come up. The weapon was small, elegant, and almost delicate. A compressed injector designed to deliver a lethal compound through fabric, skin, and into the bloodstream in seconds. No mess, no noise. The assassin pressed it into the pillow where the head should have been. Abel stepped out of the darkness. "Okay," he said calmly, "game's up." The assassin didn't freeze, didn't flinch. They reacted. A flash grenade arced from their offhand, already live, bouncing once against the floor before detonating. Abel saw it. That was the difference. He turned his head and brought his arms up just in time, the light slamming into him anyway, white and violent and absolute. Sound vanished. The world fractured into after images and ringing silence. By the time his vision clawed its way back into coherence, the room was empty. The window was open to vacuum shutters. The vent above him was disturbed. The dummy lay punctured, leaking nothing at all. Abel stood there for a moment longer, eyes burning, listening to the station hum as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Somewhere above them, someone was already disappearing into the spaces between cameras. Abel lowered his arms slowly. "Good," he murmured to the empty room. "You just confirmed everything." He keyed his comm as the first security alarms began to chirp. His voice was steady despite the lingering haze. "We've got confirmation," he said. "They're active and precise." Edith's voice came back tight. "You're sure they'll try again?" Abel glanced at the untouched closet where Gilk waited, alive and unaware of how close they had come to being the next victim. "Yes," Abel said, "because now that I'm here, they have to." And somewhere in the station's hidden arteries, the hunter was already recalculating. Abel slept for 4 hours and woke up knowing he already had the answer. It wasn't a conscious thing at first, just a pressure behind the eyes, a sense of alignment snapping into place while the station cycled into its artificial morning. He showered, dressed, and replayed the footage again, alone in a dim security review room that smelled faintly of old coffee and overheated circuitry. Most people watched security footage like it was a story. Abel watched it like it was a confession. The assassin's entry path repeated itself across angles and timestamps. Not sloppy, not rushed. They moved as if the station were familiar enough to be boring. Every turn was economical. Every pause happened where a pause made sense. They didn't hesitate at intersections or glance toward signage. They knew where they were. More telling was what they didn't do. They didn't probe alternate routes, didn't test locked access points, didn't react when guards appeared on new posts. They adjusted instead, sliding into maintenance corridors without breaking stride. Someone had planned this before Abel ever stepped onto the station. That was when he requested the meeting. The head of the Prometheus Scientific Division arrived first, composed, immaculate, carrying the faint irritation of someone who believed this was an unnecessary distraction. The security chief followed, arms crossed, already wary. Edith came last, quieter than usual, eyes moving between the 3 men. Abel didn't take a seat. He brought the footage up on the main display and let it loop silently while he leaned against the console, posture loose, almost casual. "Just a few questions," he said. "Nothing formal." The science director nodded. "Of course." Abel pointed at the screen. "This turn here. Why does the intruder take the left corridor instead of the right?" The director glanced, shrugged. "Perhaps it was closer." "Closer to what?" A pause. "To the quarters." Abel nodded, as if that settled it. "And here," he continued, tapping another frame, "they drop from an access conduit. That conduit isn't marked on public schematics. Who has access to those layouts?" "Senior staff," the director replied smoothly. "Engineering. Facilities." Of course, Abel said. And this, he added, advancing the footage. The flash grenade toss, clean angle, no rebound, practiced. The security chief shifted. That's not military, and it's not one of ours. It was homemade and improvised, see the mild scorch markings, to light for professionally manufactured explosives. Abel replied mildly. He wandered away from the screen then, drifting toward a display case along the wall. Geological samples, core fragments from survey expeditions, harmless decorative things meant to signal progress and discovery. Abel bent closer, studying them as if they'd just caught his interest. These have been worked recently, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Micro-tooling along the fracture lines. The science director frowned. They're samples. They're examined. Sure, Abel said, but not shaped. And these, he added, pointing, contain compounds that become unstable when combined. He turned, finally looking directly at the director. Two-part combustibles, he said lightly. Harmless on their own, very dangerous when combined. The room went quiet. The director opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I don't see how that's relevant. Abel smiled faintly. Abel let the footage loop once more, then killed it with a flick of his fingers. He didn't look at the screen as he spoke. Everyone keeps circling the wrong question, he said mildly. They're asking how the murders were done. That's easy. Anyone with access, patience, and a basic understanding of physiology could have managed that. The head of the Prometheus division folded his arms. Then perhaps you'd like to explain the why. Abel nodded, as if he'd been waiting for the invitation. The real target was Dr. Sert Meivner, he said, the Zebian engineer. The name settled into the room. Not because of structural anomalies, Abel continued. Not because he noticed a flaw in a containment field. Dr. Meivner was too smart for something that small. He finally turned, eyes sharp now. He figured out someone was stealing the technology. Edith stiffened. The director's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Abel walked slowly as he spoke, letting the words land where they would. Over the last year, several commercial starliners began advertising improved jump stability, cleaner entries, reduced shear, shorter recovery windows. He shrugged lightly. Incremental gains, just enough not to attract scrutiny. He tapped the console, pulling up a comparison chart. Dr. Meivner compared the liner firmware updates against Prometheus fold geometry outputs. Not the public documentation, the actual math. Abel glanced back at the director. It was identical, the security chief swore under his breath. And then there was TriMed, Abel went on, their new full-body medical scanner, the one everyone's calling revolutionary. He brought up another schematic, a shimmering lattice rotated in 3 dimensions. Full-spectrum quantum lattice stabilization, Abel said. Developed here, as a side project, not supposed to exist outside this station. He let the image hang there. Dr. Meivner followed the trail, Abel said quietly. Licensing shells, dummy subsidiaries, research grants that led nowhere. Every path curved back to one point. Abel turned fully now, facing the director. You! Silence. What I couldn't figure out, Abel said, voice almost conversational, was how Dr. Meivner made the leap from knowing the tech was being sold to knowing you were the one selling it. The director swallowed. Abel tilted his head. Until I remembered something about Zebians. He looked to Edith briefly, then back. They don't just analyze systems, they map intent. He didn't look at who could sell the tech. He looked at who benefited from its quiet success. Abel stepped closer. You had access, you had authority, and you had money flowing into accounts that didn't match your salary? The director laughed suddenly, sharp and brittle. You make it sound so simple. It usually is, Abel replied. The director's eyes flicked to the exit again. He confronted you, Abel said. Didn't he? Didn't run to oversight. Didn't go public. He tried to leverage what he knew. Abel paused. He wanted a cut. The director's face twisted. That was the insult. The room went still. I built this project, the director snapped. I shepherded it through 10 layers of bureaucratic sabotage. I earned the right to profit from it. And sharing it offended you, Abel said evenly. He was an engineer, the director spat. A tool. Brilliant, yes, but still a subordinate. He thought he could threaten me. Me! Abel nodded slowly. So, you killed him. And the others? Edith asked quietly. Noise, the director said flatly. Necessary noise. Different species. Different causes. Enough chaos to bury the truth. The director lunged for the side door. It slid open to armed security. He stopped short, shoulders slumping as the reality finally caught up to him. As the guards moved in, Abel watched him carefully. All that effort, Abel said softly, and Dr. Mivner still won. The director was hauled away, fury and disbelief burning in his eyes. Later, much later, when the station had settled and the truth was already spreading faster than any official statement could contain it, Abel would think back to the Zebian engineer who had followed the math where it led, even when it led to someone powerful. Dr. Mivner hadn't died because he noticed something was wrong. He died because he proved it. Abel packed in the spare room Edith had arranged for him, methodical, unhurried. Edith stood near the door, hands clasped, watching him zip the single worn duffel bag that had seen better decades. You know she was so angry at you when you declined her command recommendation? Really angry. A faint smile flickered and vanished. That's why she volunteered for the Marine 5 operation. Abel turned slightly. He knew the name. Everyone did. She wrote me before she deployed, Edith continued. Said she needed distance, perspective, for the 2 weeks she trained with Team Gamma as their comms and computer specialist. They treated her like she was something rare, she said. Anyone who'd served with Team Omega had a reputation. Elite of the elite. People deferred to her, asked her what to do. Squad mates, officers, even the drop master. Abel closed his eyes briefly. Edith's voice stayed steady, but her hands tightened together. She told me it scared her, Edith went on. Not because she couldn't handle the work, because she realized everyone was already looking to her like she was in command. Edith looked up at him then. She met every requirement on paper, rank, scores, citations. But she said she hadn't lived with the consequences long enough yet, hadn't failed enough people. Abel felt the ache settle deeper this time. She wrote that you were right, Edith said softly. That command isn't about wanting it. It's about knowing when you're not ready to carry everyone else with you. She swallowed. She planned to tell you when she got back. The station hummed around them, distant and uncaring. Abel didn't speak for a long moment. Marin 5, bad intel. Light resistance, they'd said. Light up until the team hacked the target node and the trap snapped shut. Anti-air emplacements hidden in terrain scans that hadn't been updated in years. Shuttles shot down seconds after liftoff. No survivors. I never wanted to be right about that, Abel said quietly. Edith nodded. She knew that. She didn't resent you in the end, Edith added. She respected you. She just ran out of time. Abel exhaled slowly. So did I, he said. Edith didn't contradict him. Abel shouldered the duffel bag and straightened. Thank you, he said quietly. The Banshee undocked without ceremony. Tom didn't ask questions. He never did. As the station shrank into a dot of light behind them, and open space swallowed the view, Abel leaned back in the crashed couch and closed his eyes. Maybe now, he murmured, I can finally take a few days off. The stars stretched, the void opened, and somewhere far beyond the comfort of borrowed peace, something else was already counting.